David looked at his expensive watch and felt his stomach tighten. 20 minutes. That's all the time he had left before the biggest meeting of his life. He adjusted his silk tie and tried to calm his nerves as his black car moved slowly through the busy city streets. At 42 years old, David had worked his way up from nothing. He started his tech company in a tiny garage 12 years ago, with just $500 and a crazy dream. Now his company was worth over $1 billion. Today's meeting could change everything. A group of investors from Japan wanted to buy his biggest competitor, and they needed David's company to make it happen. His phone buzzed non-stop. Text after text from his team, his lawyers and his assistant reminding him how important this meeting was. If everything went well today, David would make more money in one afternoon than most people see in their entire lives. $50 million. Maybe more. "Sir, traffic is really bad today," said his driver, looking worried in the mirror. "Should I try a different route?" David shook his head. "Just keep going. We'll make it." But deep down, he felt the pressure building. These Japanese businessmen had flown halfway around the world just for this meeting. They were already waiting in his company's conference room on the 40th floor. His entire board of directors was there too, dressed in their best suits, ready to make history. David's assistant had called 3 times in the last 10 minutes. "They're asking where you are," she had said, her voice tight with worry. "Mr. Tanaka seems a bit upset about the delay." He knew what this meant. In Japanese business culture, being late was one of the worst things you could do. It showed disrespect. It could kill a deal before it even started. David had spent months learning about their customs, their way of doing business, their expectations. He had practiced his presentation dozens of times. Every slide, every number, every word was perfect. The car moved forward inch by inch. David watched the city pass by outside his window. Street vendors selling hot dogs, office workers hurrying to their jobs, tourists taking pictures of the tall buildings. This was his city. He had conquered it, made his mark on it. Soon he would own an even bigger piece of it. His phone rang again. This time it was his biggest investor, the man who had believed in him when nobody else would. "David, where are you? The Japanese team is getting restless. This deal is worth everything to us. Don't mess this up. I know. I'm almost there. Just 5 more minutes." But as he said those words, the car came to a complete stop. Traffic wasn't moving at all. David could see his office building in the distance, but it might as well have been on the moon. That's when he saw them. On the sidewalk, just a few feet from his car window, stood 2 little girls. They looked exactly the same. Identical twins, probably about 7 years old. They were holding hands tightly, and both of them were crying. Their matching purple dresses were wrinkled and dirty. Their dark hair was messy, like they had been running. But what really caught David's attention was the look in their eyes. Pure fear. The girls stood there while hundreds of people walked past them. Businessmen in expensive suits, women carrying shopping bags, teenagers with headphones. Everyone just kept walking. Nobody stopped. Nobody even looked at them. David watched as one of the twins tried to wave at a passing woman, but the woman just walked faster. The other twin was crying so hard her whole body was shaking. They looked lost, scared, and completely alone in the middle of one of the busiest streets in the city. "Sir?" his driver asked. "Should I try to go around this traffic?" David didn't answer. He couldn't take his eyes off the 2 girls. One of them was now looking directly at his car. She had big brown eyes filled with tears, and she was mouthing the word help. His phone buzzed again. Another message from his assistant. "Meeting moved to conference room A. Investors want to start now. Where are you?" David's hands were sweating. This was it. This was the moment he had worked toward his entire life. Everything he had built, everything he had sacrificed, all came down to the next 30 minutes. His employees were counting on him. His investors were counting on him. His future was waiting for him in that conference room. But those 2 little girls were right there, 10 feet away, and nobody cared. He thought about his own childhood. Growing up poor in a neighborhood not much different from this one. He remembered being scared and alone, wishing someone would notice him, help him, care about him. His own parents had worked 3 jobs each just to keep food on the table. There were nights when he went to bed hungry, mornings when he wore the same clothes to school 3 days in a row because they didn't have money for laundry. Back then, David had promised himself that when he became successful, he would never ignore someone who needed help. But somewhere along the way, Between building his company and making millions of dollars, he had forgotten that promise. The car moved forward a few more feet, and David could see the girls more clearly now. They were definitely twins, and they couldn't be older than 7. The one on the left had a small cut on her knee. The one on the right was holding a torn piece of paper, maybe an address or a phone number that had gotten wet and smudged. David's phone rang again. He looked at the screen. It was Mr. Tanaka, the lead investor from Japan. "Mr. David, we are waiting. In our culture, time is very important. Are you coming?" "Yes, sir." "I'm very sorry. I'll be there in just a few minutes." "Good, we have other meetings today. If we cannot start soon, perhaps we should reschedule for next month." Next month? That would be a disaster. By next month, his competitors might have made their own deals. By next month, the opportunity could be gone forever. $50 million disappearing because of bad traffic and bad timing. David ended the call and looked out the window again. The twins were still there, still crying, still being ignored by everyone who passed by. One of them had sat down on the dirty sidewalk, exhausted from crying. The other one was trying to get her sister to stand up. "Sir, I think I can get us there in 5 minutes if I take the next right," his driver said. 5 minutes. David could make it to his meeting, save his deal, secure his future. All he had to do was look away from those 2 scared little girls and focus on what really mattered: his business, his money, his success. But as he watched them, something inside his chest felt tight. These weren't just any children. They were someone's daughters, someone's granddaughters. They had names, personalities, favorite toys, favorite foods. They had bedtime stories and birthday wishes and dreams about what they wanted to be when they grew up. Right now, though they were just 2 terrified little girls standing on a busy street corner, hoping someone would care enough to help them. David looked at his watch again. 15 minutes until his meeting. 15 minutes to change his life forever, one way or another. His hand moved toward the door handle. "Stop the car," he said quietly. "Sir?" his driver asked, confused. David took a deep breath and looked one more time at his phone, where messages from his team kept coming in. Then he looked at the 2 girls who needed help right now. "Stop the car," he said again, this time louder and more certain than he had ever been about anything in his life. David stepped out of his car and immediately felt the noise and chaos of the busy street hit him. Car horns honking, people talking loudly, construction work somewhere nearby. He had spent so many years riding in quiet, comfortable cars that he had almost forgotten what the real world sounded like. His driver looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Sir, what are you doing?" "The meeting." "Just wait here," David said, straightening his expensive suit jacket. "I'll be right back." But even as he said those words, he wasn't sure if they were true. The 2 little girls were about 20 feet away, still holding hands, still crying. As David walked toward them, he noticed how small they looked compared to all the adults rushing past them. Everyone was so focused on their own problems, their own schedules, their own lives, that these children might as well have been invisible. David's phone started ringing again. He looked at the screen and saw his assistant's name flashing. He let it go to voicemail. When he got closer to the girls, he slowed down. He didn't want to scare them even more than they already were. He had never been good with children. His life had been all about business meetings, phone calls, and making deals. The only kids he ever saw were in commercials, or when his employees brought their families to company picnics. The twins noticed him approaching and took a step back. They were definitely identical. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same heart-shaped faces. But David could see small differences now that he was closer. One girl had a small scar above her left eyebrow. The other one was slightly taller and seemed to be the braver of the 2. "Hey there," David said softly, crouching down so he would be at their eye level. "Are you okay?" The taller girl wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "We can't find our grandma," she said in a shaky voice. "We were supposed to stay close to her," the other girl added, starting to cry harder. "But there were so many people and the music was so loud, and then we couldn't see her anymore." David felt his heart break a little. These poor kids were probably terrified. "What are your names?" he asked gently. "I'm Luna," said the taller girl. "And this is my sister Star. We're twins." "Nice to meet you, Luna and Star. I'm David. How old are you?" "We're 7, Star said, holding up 7 small fingers. "We just had our birthday last month. Grandma made us a cake with pink flowers on it." David's phone buzzed with another text message. He ignored it. That sounds like a really nice cake. Now, do you remember where you last saw your grandma? Luna pointed toward the end of the street. Over there by the place with all the balloons. There was a man making balloon animals, and Star really wanted a pink elephant. Grandma said we could get one after we bought some food. But when we turned around, she was gone, Star whispered, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. David looked in the direction Luna had pointed. He could see colorful balloons floating above the crowd, probably 3 or 4 blocks away. That was pretty far for 2 7-year-olds to walk by themselves, especially in this busy area. Okay, David said, trying to sound calm and confident. Don't worry. We're going to find your grandma. Do you know her phone number? Both girls shook their heads. We don't have a phone, Luna said. Grandma says maybe when we're older. Do you know your address? Where you live? We live with Grandma Rosa, Star said. In the apartment with the red door. But I don't know the numbers. David felt his phone vibrating in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw 5 missed calls and 12 new text messages. One was from Mr. Tanaka himself. Mr. David, we are very concerned. Please call immediately. David stared at the message for a long moment. He could almost see the conference room in his mind. All those serious men in dark suits checking their watches, getting more impatient by the minute. His entire future was slipping away while he stood on a street corner talking to 2 lost children. But when he looked back at Luna and Star, he knew he couldn't just walk away. Listen, he said to the girls. I'm going to help you find your grandma. But first I need to make a quick phone call, okay? I want you to stay right here next to me. Don't move no matter what. Can you do that? Both girls nodded seriously. David dialed his assistant's number. She answered before the first ring finished. David, thank goodness.
Where are you?
Mr. Tanaka is asking if we should postpone the meeting. The board is freaking out. This is a disaster. Listen to me carefully, David said, watching the twins to make sure they stayed close. I need you to tell everyone that I'm going to be late. Maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. 2 hours. David, are you crazy? This deal is worth $50 million. These people flew here from Tokyo. I know what it's worth, David said quietly. But something important came up. More important than $50 million? More important than the future of our company? David looked at Luna and Star, who were holding hands so tightly their knuckles were white. Star was trying very hard not to cry anymore, but her bottom lip was trembling. Luna was being brave for her sister, but David could see the fear in her eyes. Yes, he said finally, more important than $50 million. His assistant was quiet for a moment. David, I don't understand. What could possibly be more important than this meeting? Just do what I asked, please. Tell them I'll be there as soon as I can. If they can't wait, then... David paused, hardly believing what he was about to say. Then tell them we'll have to reschedule. Reschedule? David, they might not give us another chance. I know, David said. I have to go now. He hung up before his assistant could say anything else. Luna tugged on his suit jacket. Are you in trouble because of us? She asked, her voice very small. David knelt down again and smiled at both girls. No, sweetie. I'm not in trouble. I'm exactly where I need to be. His phone rang again immediately. This time it was his biggest investor, the man who had put millions of dollars into David's company. David looked at the phone, then at the girls, then back at the phone. After 3 rings, he turned it off completely and put it in his pocket. Okay, girls, he said, standing up and brushing off his pants. Let's go find your Grandma Rosa. Star's face lit up for the first time since David had seen her. Really? You're going to help us? Really, David said. But we need to be smart about this. Can you tell me what your grandma looks like? She has gray hair and she wears glasses, Luna said. And she has a little limp because her knee hurts sometimes. She was wearing her blue dress today, Star added. The one with the white flowers on it. She said it was her favorite dress for special days. And she smells like vanilla cookies, Luna said with a small smile. She always smells like vanilla cookies because she works at a bakery. David nodded, filing away every detail. That's really helpful. Now I want you both to hold my hands and we're going to walk back toward those balloons. We'll look for Grandma Rosa together, okay? The girls each took one of his hands. Their small fingers felt warm and trusting in his big hands. And David felt something he hadn't experienced in years. A sense of purpose that had nothing to do with money or business deals. As they started walking down the busy street together, David's car followed slowly behind them. His driver looked confused and worried, but David didn't care. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt like he was doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing, even if it cost him everything. Walking down the busy street with Luna and Star felt like entering a completely different world. David had walked these same sidewalks hundreds of times before, but always rushing from his car to a building, always focused on his phone, always thinking about his next meeting. Now moving slowly with two small children, he noticed things he had never seen before. The street smelled like hot dogs and car exhaust. Music drifted from store windows. People were laughing, arguing, talking on phones in different languages. Street performers played guitar for tips. Vendors sold flowers and newspapers. This was real life happening all around him, and David realized he had been missing it for years. There, Star suddenly pointed excitedly toward a cluster of colorful balloons. That's where we saw the balloon man. They made their way through the crowd toward the balloon vendor. David had to walk much slower than usual to match the girls' short steps. People kept bumping into them, hurrying past without saying excuse me. A few people stared curiously at David, a man in an expensive suit holding hands with two, obviously poor children. But most didn't even notice. The balloon man was a cheerful older gentleman with paint on his fingers and a warm smile. When David explained they were looking for the girl's grandmother, his face filled with concern. "Oh yes, I remember these little angels," he said, kneeling down to Luna and Star's level. "Your grandma was so proud of you too. She kept talking about how smart you are in school. Did you see where she went?" David asked hopefully. The balloon man shook his head sadly. "There were so many people. After she bought your balloons, I lost track of her in the crowd. But I did notice she seemed tired. She was walking kind of slow." David's heart sank a little, but he tried to stay positive for the girls. "Well, let's keep looking. She can't be too far." They spent the next hour searching everywhere. David asked every vendor, every store owner, every security guard they could find. Some people were helpful, others were too busy to care. A few remembered seeing an older woman in a blue dress, but the descriptions were vague and the directions conflicting. Luna and Star were getting tired. Their little legs weren't used to walking so much, and David could see they were getting scared again. Every few minutes, one of them would ask, "Do you think we'll find her?" And David would say yes, even though he was starting to worry. That's when he had an idea. "Girls, do you mind if I take a picture of you?" David asked, pulling out his phone. "Why?" Luna asked suspiciously. "Well, I have a lot of friends who follow me on social media. If I post your picture and ask for help finding your grandma, maybe someone will see it and know where she is." Star looked uncertain. "Grandma Rosa says we're not supposed to talk to strangers on the internet." "That's very smart of your grandma," David said. "But this is different. I'm not asking you to talk to anyone. I'm just asking my friends to help us look for her. Is that okay?" The girls looked at each other, having one of those silent twin conversations that David had heard about but never seen. Finally, Luna nodded. "Okay, but make sure you tell them that Grandma Rosa is the best grandma in the whole world." David smiled and took several photos of the twins. Then he sat down on a nearby bench and started typing on his phone. He wasn't sure how many people followed his social media accounts. Maybe a few thousand business contacts and employees. He rarely posted anything personal, just company news and professional updates, but this was different. "I'm here in downtown with Luna and Star, two 7-year-old twins who are looking for their Grandma Rosa," he typed. "She's wearing a blue dress with white flowers, has gray hair and glasses, and walks with a slight limp. They got separated near the balloon vendors on 5th Street about 2 hours ago. If anyone has seen her, please share this post or send me a message. These girls need to get home safely." He attached the photos and hit share. Within minutes, something amazing started happening. David's phone began buzzing constantly with notifications. People were sharing his post, commenting with encouragement and offering to help search. The post was spreading far beyond his usual business contacts. "Shared with my neighborhood group. My mom lives near there, I'll call her to look. This is so sweet of you to help." Posting this in all the local Facebook groups. David stared at his phone in amazement. He had built his entire career on technology and social media, but he had never seen anything spread this fast. Within 20 minutes, his post had been shared over 500 times. Then the tips started coming in. "I think I saw her at the bus stop on 7th Street. A woman matching that description was at the community center asking for help." Check the police station. Maybe she reported the girls missing. David showed Luna and Star some of the comments. Look how many people want to help you find your grandma, he said. Star's eyes went wide. All these people care about us? Of course they do, David said, and he realized he meant it. When good people hear about children who need help, they want to do something about it. One message caught David's attention. It was from a woman named Isabella who worked at a nearby community center. A woman named Rosa came here about an hour ago. She was crying and asking us to call the police because she lost her twin granddaughters. She's still here waiting for news. The community center is on Oak Street, 2 blocks from where you are. David's heart started racing. Girls, I think we found her. They hurried toward the community center, Luna and Star practically bouncing with excitement. But as they walked, David's phone rang. It was his assistant again. David, I don't know how to tell you this, she said, her voice shaky. The Japanese investors left. They said they couldn't wait any longer. The deal is off. David stopped walking for a moment, feeling like someone had punched him in the stomach. $50 million gone. Just like that. What about the board meeting? He asked. They're furious. They want to know where you are and why you disappeared during the most important deal in company history. Some of them are talking about whether you should still be CEO. David looked at Luna and Star, who were waiting for him to keep walking, their faces full of hope and trust. Tell the board I'll explain everything later, he said finally. David, you need to come back right now. You need to fix this before it gets worse. I can't come back right now, David said quietly. I made a promise to 2 little girls and I'm going to keep it. He hung up and put his phone away. Luna tugged on his sleeve. Are you in trouble because you're helping us? She asked, her voice worried. David knelt down and looked both girls in the eyes. You know what? Even if I am in trouble, it's okay, because helping you is the right thing to do, and doing the right thing is always more important than money or business meetings. Star reached out and hugged him around the neck. Thank you for not leaving us, she whispered. David felt tears in his eyes for the first time in years. I would never leave you, he said. We're going to find your grandma, I promise. As they approached the community center, David could see through the glass doors. There, sitting in a chair with her head in her hands, was an older woman in a blue dress with white flowers. Even from a distance, he could see she was crying. Grandma Rosa. Both girls shouted at the same time. The search was almost over. But David's real journey was just beginning. The moment Luna and Star saw their grandmother through the glass doors, they let go of David's hands and ran as fast as their little legs could carry them. David watched as the woman in the blue dress looked up, confusion turning to pure joy as she recognized her granddaughters. Luna! Star! Grandma Rosa cried out, jumping up from her chair despite her bad knee. She caught both girls in her arms, holding them so tight it looked like she might never let them go. All 3 of them were crying now, the girls from relief and happiness, and Rosa from overwhelming gratitude that her babies were safe. David stood back, watching the reunion from a respectful distance. His expensive suit felt out of place in the simple community center, but nobody seemed to care. Other people in the room, some waiting for services, some volunteers helping families, had stopped what they were doing to watch the emotional scene unfold. After what felt like forever, Rosa finally looked up and saw David standing near the door. She gently moved the girls aside and walked over to him, tears still streaming down her face. Are you the man who found my girls? She asked, her voice shaking with emotion. I'm David, he said simply. And yes, I helped them look for you. Rosa grabbed his hands in both of hers. Her hands were rough and calloused from years of hard work, but warm and gentle. I don't know how to thank you, she said. I was so scared. I thought I had lost them forever. They're brave girls, David said, looking over at Luna and Star, who were still clinging to their grandmother. They never gave up hope that we'd find you. Rosa wiped her eyes with a tissue that one of the community center workers had given her. I only turned away for 1 second to pay for some food, and when I looked back, they were gone. There were so many people, so much noise. I've been searching everywhere. The community center staff has been helping me call the police, posting flyers, everything, Rosa continued. But I felt so helpless. These girls are my whole world. Their parents died in a car accident 3 years ago, and now it's just the 3 of us. David felt his chest tighten. He had assumed the girls lived with their grandmother because their parents were working or traveling. He hadn't imagined they had experienced such a terrible loss at such a young age. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. Rosa nodded, fresh tears in her eyes. Their mama was my daughter, my only child. When she and their daddy died, I promised I would take care of Luna and Star no matter what. But sometimes I wonder if I'm doing a good enough job. I work 2 jobs just to pay rent and buy food. I can't give them all the things other kids have. Grandma Rosa is the best, Star interrupted, running over to hug her grandmother's leg. She makes us pancakes on Sunday mornings and reads us stories every night. And she helps us with our homework even when she's really tired from work, Luna added, joining her sister. David could see the love between them so clearly. These weren't rich people with fancy clothes or expensive toys, but they had something more valuable than anything money could buy. Would you like me to give you a ride home? David offered. My car's right outside. Rosa looked uncertain. Oh, that's very kind, but you've already done so much. We can take the bus, please, David said. I'd really like to make sure you all get home safely. 20 minutes later, they were driving through a part of the city David had never seen before. The buildings were older, the streets were narrower, and many of the shops had signs in Spanish. David's driver navigated carefully through the residential area, while Luna and Star pointed out landmarks from the back seat. That's where we buy groceries, Star said excitedly. And that's our school, Luna added, pointing to a small building that looked like it could use some repairs. Rosa lived in a modest apartment complex with faded brick walls and a small playground in the courtyard. As they pulled up, David could see children playing outside despite the late hour, their parents watching from nearby benches. This is us, Rosa said as the car stopped in front of a building with several red doors. Apartment 2C. David got out to help them, and that's when he really saw how they lived. The hallway smelled like cooking food and cleaning supplies. Paint was peeling from the walls, and he could hear televisions and conversations from neighboring apartments. Rosa's apartment was tiny but spotlessly clean. The furniture was old but well cared for, and the walls were covered with the girls' artwork and school certificates. Would you like some coffee? Rosa asked, even though David could tell she was exhausted. Or maybe some water? I'm fine, thank you, David said, looking around the small living room. There were pictures everywhere. The girls as babies, their parents' wedding photo, Rosa when she was younger. Despite having so little, this place felt more like a home than David's expensive penthouse ever had. Luna and Star were already showing him their favorite things. A stuffed elephant with a missing ear, a puzzle they had put together 5 times, books they had read over and over because they couldn't afford new ones. Grandma Rosa reads to us every night, Star said proudly, even when she falls asleep in the middle because she's tired from work. Rosa looked embarrassed. I work at a bakery during the day and clean offices at night. Sometimes I get home pretty late. David sat down on their small couch and both girls immediately climbed up next to him. What do you want to be when you grow up? He asked them. I want to be a teacher, Luna said confidently, so I can help kids learn to read. I want to be a doctor, Star added, so I can help people feel better when they're sick. David felt something crack open in his chest. These little girls who had so little dreamed of spending their lives helping others. Meanwhile, he had spent years focused only on making more money for himself. His phone had been buzzing constantly during the car ride, but he had ignored it. Now, sitting in Rosa's tiny living room, he finally looked at the messages. Dozens of missed calls, angry emails from board members, news articles about the failed deal. His company's stock price had already dropped, but looking at Luna and Star, curled up against him on the couch while Rosa made them some soup for dinner, David realized something that shocked him. He didn't care. For the first time in his adult life, losing money didn't feel like the end of the world. These girls were safe with their grandmother, and that felt more important than any business deal. Ever could, Mr. David, Luna said quietly. Are you going to get in trouble for helping us? David put his arm around both girls and smiled. You know what? Even if I do get in trouble, it was worth it. Meeting you two has been the best part of my whole week. Really? Star asked, her eyes wide. Really, David said, and he meant every word. As he prepared to leave that evening, Rosa walked him to the door. I still don't know how to thank you, she said. You saved my girls today. David shook his head. I think they saved me. He meant that too, though he was only beginning to understand just how much his life was about to change. The next morning, David woke up in his expensive penthouse apartment and felt completely different. The place that had once made him proud now felt cold and empty. His walls were covered with awards and photos of business achievements, but none of them seemed to matter anymore. All he could think about were Luna and Star in their tiny apartment, probably eating breakfast with their grandmother before getting ready for school. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rosa's grateful tears and heard the girls' laughter. He kept thinking about what Star had said about wanting to be a doctor and Luna's dream of becoming a teacher. These children had such big hearts and beautiful dreams, but David knew how hard it would be for them to achieve those goals without help. His phone had been ringing nonstop since 6 in the morning. Finally, he answered. "David, where have you been?" It was his assistant, and she sounded panicked. "The board wants to see you immediately. The Japanese deal is completely dead. The stock price dropped 12% yesterday. People are saying you've lost your mind." "Maybe I have," David said quietly, looking out his window at the city below. "What does that mean?" "David, you need to come in right now and fix this mess." "I'll be there in an hour," David said, and hung up. But instead of getting dressed in his usual expensive suit, David found himself putting on jeans and a simple sweater. He looked in the mirror and barely recognized himself. For the first time in years, he looked relaxed. Before heading to the office, David made a stop that surprised even him. He drove back to Rosa's neighborhood and parked outside the girls' school. It was a small public school with cracked sidewalks and peeling paint on the walls. Children were arriving for the day, most of them walking because their families couldn't afford cars. David sat in his car and watched Luna and Star get off the city bus with their grandmother. Rosa was wearing what looked like a work uniform under her coat, probably heading to her job at the bakery after dropping the girls off. The twins had matching backpacks that looked like they had seen better days, but they were holding hands and talking excitedly about something. As they reached the school gate, Luna looked around and spotted David's car. She tugged on Star's sleeve and pointed. Both girls waved enthusiastically, their faces lighting up with genuine joy at seeing him again. David rolled down his window. "Good morning, girls. Ready for school?" "Mr. David," Star called out, running over to the car. "You came to see us." "We told everyone at school about you," Luna added, joining her sister. "About how you helped us find Grandma Rosa." Rosa approached more slowly, looking concerned. "Is everything okay? We didn't expect to see you again." "Everything's fine," David said. "I just wanted to make sure you all got to school safely." But that wasn't the whole truth. The real truth was that David had never felt more connected to anything in his life than he felt to this little family. An hour later, David walked into his company's boardroom to face 12 very angry men in expensive suits. These were some of the most powerful business leaders in the city, and they all looked like they wanted to fire him on the spot. "David, what the hell happened yesterday?" demanded his chairman of the board. "We had the deal of a lifetime and you disappeared. The Japanese investors think we're unprofessional. Our reputation is ruined." "I'm sorry about the timing," David said, taking his usual seat at the head of the table. "But I had to help some people who needed me." "More important than $50 million? Another board member asked incredulously. David thought about Luna and Star's frightened faces, about Rosa's tears of relief, about the love he had witnessed in that tiny apartment. "Yes," he said simply. "More important than $50 million. The room erupted in angry voices. People were shouting about responsibility, about shareholders, about the future of the company, but David felt strangely calm. "Are you having some kind of breakdown?" the chairman asked. "Because that's the only explanation for throwing away the biggest deal in our company's history." "I'm not having a breakdown," David said quietly. "I'm having a wake-up call." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city where somewhere Luna and Star were sitting in their classroom, learning and dreaming about their futures. "For 12 years, I've built this company thinking that success meant making more money than last year," David continued. "I measured everything by profit margins and stock prices. I thought if I just made enough money, I'd be happy. But yesterday I met 2 little girls who have almost nothing, and they're happier than I've been in years." "David, you're talking nonsense," the chairman said. "We have responsibilities to our investors, our employees." "You're right," David interrupted. "We do have responsibilities. But maybe our responsibility isn't just to make rich people richer. Maybe we have a responsibility to use our success to help people who actually need it." The room fell silent. David had never talked like this before. He had always been focused, driven, purely business-minded. "What are you suggesting?" asked one of the board members. David turned back to face them. "I'm suggesting we start a foundation. I want to take 20% of our annual profits and use them to help families like the one I met yesterday. Kids who need better schools, families who can't afford health care, grandparents raising children on minimum wage. That's charity, not business," the chairman said dismissively. "Maybe it's both," David replied. "Maybe doing good and doing well don't have to be separate things." The argument continued for another hour, but David's mind was made up. That afternoon, while his board members grumbled and complained, David drove back to Luna and Star's neighborhood. This time he went to the community center where he had found Rosa. "I want to help," he told the director. "I want to start a program that provides scholarships for kids, job training for adults, and support for families who are struggling." The director, a kind woman named Patricia, looked skeptical. "That's very generous, Mr. David, but programs like that require long-term commitment. It's not just about writing a check." "I understand," David said, "and I'm ready to make that commitment." Over the next 6 months, David's life changed completely. He started the foundation with his own money, not company funds. He visited Luna and Star's school every week, sometimes reading to classes, sometimes just talking to kids about their dreams. He hired Rosa to help run the community outreach program, which meant she could quit her night job and spend more time with the girls. Luna and Star became his unofficial advisors, helping him understand what kids in their neighborhood really needed. They told him about friends who came to school hungry, about families who couldn't afford winter coats, about talented kids who couldn't afford music lessons or sports equipment. The foundation grew quickly. Other business leaders, inspired by David's example, started contributing. The story of the CEO who gave up a $50 million deal to help 2 lost children spread around the world, bringing in donations from people who had never even heard of David's company. David's company stock eventually recovered and grew even stronger. Customers loved supporting a business that gave back to the community. Employees felt proud to work for a company with heart. The Japanese investors even came back a year later with an even better deal. But the real measure of David's success wasn't in any financial report. It was in the Christmas morning when Luna and Star gave him a homemade card that said, "Thank you for being our friend." It was in watching Rosa walk across the stage to receive her GED diploma. It was in the dozens of kids who were now going to college on foundation scholarships. David still lived in his penthouse and wore expensive suits to work. But now his walls were covered with children's artwork and thank you letters from families. His calendar was filled with school visits and community events alongside business meetings. And every night before bed, he remembered the moment when he chose to stop his car and help 2 scared little girls. It was the best business decision he had ever made, even though it had nothing to do with business at all. Sometimes the most important meetings are the ones you never planned to attend. Sometimes the biggest success comes from the smallest act of kindness, and sometimes when you think you're helping someone else, you discover that they're the ones who saved you.